When a little girl walked into the animal shelter, no one could have predicted what happened next. A German Shepherd, silent and withdrawn for years, suddenly began to cry the moment his eyes met hers. The staff froze. Visitors stopped in their tracks. Why was this dog crying? The truth behind that moment would break Eve. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your state or country in the comments below. It's always amazing to see, at the far end of the shelter, where the light from the windows barely reached, sat a German Shepherd named Buddy. Unlike the other dogs, Buddy never barked when people passed his cage. He didn't wag his tail. He didn't press his nose against the bars hoping for attention. Instead, he simply lay still, his head resting on his paws, his dark eyes heavy with a sadness that seemed to run deeper than words. Day after day, families strolled past his kennel. Children pointed excitedly at puppies that jumped and barked, tails wagging like whips. Parents smiled, pausing to watch playful antics. But no one stopped at Buddy's cage. His silence made him invisible, his sorrow misunderstood as coldness. The truth was very different. Buddy wasn't waiting for any family, he was waiting for someone. Somewhere inside, he still carried the memory of gentle hands, a child's laughter, and a home filled with love. He hadn't forgotten. He simply didn't know if they remembered him. The shelter staff whispered that Buddy had likely given up hope, but deep in his heart, a fragile ember still glowed. He wasn't waiting for adoption. He was waiting for a reunion. That afternoon, the shelter doors opened with a squeak, letting in a rush of cool air and the sound of footsteps. A young couple walked inside, but it was the little girl between them who drew every eye. Her name was Emma, 8 years old, with bright blue eyes and blonde hair pinned neatly to the side. She wore a pink dress that swayed with each careful step. In her small hand, she clutched her mother's fingers, though her gaze was fixed straight ahead, wide and searching. The shelter was noisy dogs, barking paws, scraping against metal tails, thudding against cage doors. But Emma seemed untouched by the chaos. She moved slowly, almost thoughtfully, peering into each kennel with unusual focus. It was as though she wasn't just looking for a dog, she was looking for the dog. Her father, David, crouched beside her. "Do you see one you like, sweetheart?" he asked gently. Emma didn't answer. She let go of her mother's hand and drifted down the row as though something unseen was calling to her. Halfway down the aisle, she froze. Her breath caught, her eyes widened, and in a trembling whisper, she said one word: Buddy. The name fell from Emma's lips like a spark in the quiet chaos of the shelter. Buddy, the German Shepherd who for months had sat motionless in his cage, suddenly stirred. His ears twitched, his body trembled, and then his eyes locked on the little girl standing just a few feet away. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. Then something extraordinary happened. Buddy began to cry. A low, aching whimper rose from his throat, growing louder until it echoed through the aisle. His paws pressed desperately against the cold metal bars, his tail thumped against the floor, and his dark, soulful eyes filled with tears. The staff froze in disbelief. Visitors mid-step turned to stare. They had never seen this dog react to anyone until now. Emma's own eyes filled, her small hands trembling as she reached toward him. "It's him," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's really him." Tears streamed down her cheeks as Buddy pawed frantically at the cage, as if trying to push through and reach her. Her mother knelt beside her, startled. "Sweetheart, are you sure?" Emma nodded fiercely. "He remembers me. I know it's Buddy, and no one in the room could deny it." The recognition was undeniable, raw, and overwhelming. Months of silence shattered in a single instant. The shepherd who had been invisible to the world was alive again, with joy, with longing, with love. The shelter fell quiet as though everyone sensed they were witnessing something sacred. A reunion, not between strangers, but between old friends who had found each other again. Buddy pressed his nose against the bars, whimpering Emma's name without words. And she, through her tears, whispered back, "I told you." He never forgot me. The air inside the shelter grew heavy with anticipation. Staff members exchanged uncertain glances, clipboards clutched in their hands. Families who had come looking for their own pets stood frozen, unable to tear their eyes away from the scene unfolding before them. For months, Buddy had been the quiet one, the dog who never barked, never wagged, never begged for attention. And yet, here he was, trembling with emotion, crying out as though the little girl before him was the only person in the world who mattered. One of the shelter workers whispered, "I've never seen him like this. He's never reacted to anyone before." Another nodded, stunned. "It's like he knows her." Emma pressed her tiny hands against the bars, tears streaking down her cheeks. Her voice shook, but her words were certain. "Please, let me see him. He's my Buddy." The staff hesitated. Rules were rules. But in that moment, rules seemed so small compared to the miracle in front of them. With trembling fingers, one worker fumbled with the keys, the metal jingling as the lock finally clicked open. The door swung wide. Before anyone could blink, Buddy bolted forward. Not with fear, not with hesitation, but with unrestrained love. He barreled into Emma's arms, knocking her backward onto her knees. She clung to him tightly, her sobs mixing with his sharp, joyous barks. His tail beat furiously against the floor, his nose buried against her chest, as if he never planned to let go again. Gasps and murmurs filled the shelter, but no one dared interrupt. It was as if the entire world had vanished, leaving only a little girl and her long-lost best friend. Emma's mother covered her mouth, tears spilling down her face. Her father's eyes glistened as he placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Through sobs and laughter, Emma whispered into Buddy's fur, "You're home now. I'll never let you go again." The shelter staff worked quickly, their hands still shaking from what they had just witnessed. Paperwork was usually a slow process, but not today. No one wanted to delay this reunion, not even for a moment. Forms were signed, documents stamped, and the final leash was clipped onto Buddy's collar. Emma held the leash proudly, one small hand wrapped tightly around the worn leather, while her other hand never left Buddy's fur. He stayed pressed against her side, his body language transformed. The broken, silent dog they had known for months was gone. In his place stood a shepherd with bright eyes, his tail wagging as if every step carried him closer to freedom. The family moved toward the front doors, the afternoon sunlight pouring through the glass panels like a warm blessing. Staff members gathered quietly to watch. Some smiled through their tears, others wiped their eyes behind clipboards. Even the other visitors who had come searching for pets of their own paused to applaud softly. They all knew they had witnessed something far beyond chance. Just before stepping outside, Emma stopped. She turned back toward the rows of kennels, her cheeks still wet, but glowing with a radiant smile. "Thank you," she whispered to the staff, her small voice trembling with joy. Buddy gave a sharp, happy bark, as though echoing her words. The automatic door slid open, and together they stepped into the golden light of late afternoon. Buddy trotted proudly at Emma's side, his ears perked his stride, confident. Every so often, he glanced up at her as if to make sure she was really there, as if to reassure himself that this time he was truly going home. Outside, the world seemed brighter, lighter, almost as if it too understood the miracle that had taken place. For Emma and Buddy, the long months of sorrow were over. Their story wasn't about loss anymore. It was about finding each other again, about love that never faded, and about the promise of forever. And for everyone who had witnessed it, the memory of that reunion would linger like a reminder. Sometimes miracles happen when we least expect them. A week later, the house felt alive again. For months, Emma's parents had grown used to the silence, the absence of paws on the floor, the quiet yard, the stillness that lingered after Buddy disappeared. Now every corner of the home echoed with life again. The soft thump of a wagging tail against the couch, the scratch of paws racing across the kitchen tiles, and the gentle rhythm of a dog's breathing as he lay curled at Emma's feet. Buddy had settled back into family life, as though no time had passed. He followed Emma everywhere, up the stairs into the backyard, even lying patiently outside her bedroom door at night. Wherever she went, he was there, his loyal shadow. At times, Emma's parents caught him watching her with an expression that almost seemed human, a look of quiet relief, as though he too couldn't believe he was home again. The neighborhood quickly learned about their story. Neighbors stopped by just to see Buddy, some bringing treats, others simply wanting to meet the miracle dog. People shook their heads in wonder, amazed that a little girl and her lost dog had found each other again, against all odds. One evening, as the family sat on the porch, Emma rested her head against Buddy's shoulder. "I told you he'd come back," she whispered to her parents, her eyes shining. Her father smiled, ruffling her hair. "And you were right, sweetheart. Sometimes love is stronger than anything else." Buddy lifted his head, ears perked, then leaned closer into Emma's embrace. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the yard in a golden glow. At last, the family was whole again, and Buddy was home forever. Life often reminds us that the strongest connections are not built on words, but on trust, loyalty, and love. The story of the little girl and her German Shepherd shows us that even when circumstances seem hopeless, bonds of the heart remain unbroken. The dog, silent for so long, found his voice again only when he saw the one person who had never stopped loving him. In that moment, we are reminded that compassion and faith can bridge even the deepest separations. In our own lives, it is easy to overlook those who seem quiet, withdrawn, or forgotten. Yet just like the shepherd in the shelter, many people, and even animals, are simply waiting for someone to recognize their worth and believe in them again. A kind word, a gentle touch, or simply being present can make all the difference. The lesson is simple yet profound: never give up on love, and never underestimate the power of loyalty. Relationships, whether with family, friends, or our beloved pets, are built on patience and faith. Sometimes miracles are not about what is found, but about who is never truly lost.